first time you ever do something is typically the way that you will continue to do it into the future. And this is because your mind is creating a shortcut. It is creating a reference point for that kind of behavior to save energy into the future. And as much as I, as a don't like to use the word self-improvement YouTuber, but as an educator, want to give you the tools in order to live your life to the best of your ability to self-actualize. I do think there is a lot of merit to the idea of willpower. It's going to be very, very resourceful for you moving forward. There's actually specific parts in the brain that begin to develop and begin to enhance more neural connections and build up certain gray matter, especially in the prefrontal cortex, which is the masculine element in your brain, as opposed to your limbic system, which is very lower, very kind of primal, impulsive, and typically goes to the path of the least resistance in respects to food and respects to sex. I believe not harnessing a combination of both willpower and in both, what would you say, the mechanisms that we use in order to create habits to our advantage. I believe the smartest people among us actually use a combination of these two. As much as, I think it's the kind of rose-tinted glasses we view the individuals that we want to emulate in our life. Maybe you see somebody inspiring in the movies or inspiring on the internet, and you begin to kind of cultivate this larger than life schema or idea or reference point in your mind about how powerful they are, and you begin to create a massive gap in your mind in relation to what they achieve in relation to who you are. And these will be your cult leaders, these will be your gurus. A lot of people idolize people like Sadhguru and believe that they have these otherworldly powers, and whether or not that's true, I believe to the average man living in this world, if you're the average man kind of similar to me, or average, I know is a pejorative nowadays when we want to distance ourselves from that. If you want to be beyond average, but still leverage things in your environment that are going to be of utility towards you, we have to look at screening our environment. There has to be a combination of both developing our willpower, developing that prefrontal cortex element of our mind in combination with smart and intelligent decisions. So it's the combination I like to easily describe as working hard, but also working smart as well. The combinations of these things will make you a ruthless monster, and you want to be a ruthless monster. In this way, it is very, very, I continually, especially if when I first moved to this flat, I was very, very diligent in how I set up my flat to be conducive to behavior that was going to be resourceful towards productivity and not feel-good behavior. As much as, because again, in my preface here, we were discussing this idea that the first time you do something in a new environment is typically the way that you'll do it. One of the actions that I find very, very resourceful is if I know I need to get a lot of work done, typically I'll go to a location that I've never been to before, such as a coffee shop I've never been to before. And typically the intention in combination with a new environment predisposes you to do your intention and not be distracted otherwise. However, if you're in a familiar environment, such as your home, such as maybe a social environment, typically you'll proceed down the path that you've always gone through because there is a certain comfort and familiarity in that particular task. And when we go into new environments, we leverage that, let's say, less comforting emotion that we feel, and we typically follow a pre-planned prerequisite in order to facilitate the kind of behavior that we want to do. Now, the trouble is, and this is why workspaces are becoming more popular now, where you see people in coffee shops working, because they're kind of leveraging that new idea, because at home they're going to be distracted and they're going to fall into social homely patterns. Now, one of the things that I think is very, very harsh and but equally true is the idea that you're not as maybe strong or as smart as you would like to think, and I accept that as true for myself. And I recognize my body's reflex, or my limbic system's reflex, to do things that make me feel good as opposed to are good for me. I mean, think about that. The difference between feel good tasks and tasks that are actually good for you. And you can draw this up in an example in terms of your nutritional habits. It's very, very convenient to drink alcohol if you have alcohol in your home. It's very, very convenient to smoke cigarettes if you have cigarettes in your home. It's very, very easy to watch adult material if you have adult material on your phone and on your computer. And in that way, we want to leverage the environmental cues that make it easier for certain behavior to happen and reorganize them and re-reference them in relation to the positive behavior that we want to make. Now, a lot of people will fight me on this, and this is why I kind of I'm using this this visual tool here to allow us to better understand and visualize and practically comprehend the point that I'm trying to make. So, if this is us, and our immediate surroundings are full with the kinds of things that are not conducive to our health. I mean, I've often said that as we talk about the ubiquity of adult material in our culture, that trying to quit something like that is like trying to quit cigarettes, but you've always got that cigarette in your pocket. So you're kind of walking around in this anxiety that it's so convenient. The lag time between thinking and doing that particular task is 1 second to be able to pull that cigarette out and light it up and smoke is too convenient. And then when you talk about something like adult material, and you have your phone here, and I mean, you don't even need to go to the shops to buy a cigarette. You always have your phone in your pocket. It's like a third arm for most people nowadays. The lag time to that, with the combination of something like privacy, and you'll be amazed at some of the questions and problems I've had posed to me in this particular respect. Like some people don't even need privacy. I've had some people say that they have trouble watching adult material, at the workplace where they're supposed to be earning a living, or at school where they're supposed to be getting an education. And it's just remarkable to me that we've gotten to this state. Now, I don't think this pertains to everybody. I do think it pertains to a certain kind of person who has trouble with these things more than others. There are some individuals out there who can quit certain habits seemingly cold turkey overnight, and they need no help whatsoever. I do think these are special kinds of people. I actually thought I was this kind of person, as the first time I learned about SR and NoFap, I went about 2 months cold turkey clean. But then again, the convenience of this kind of dynamic began to creep up, and I found myself falling back into old patterns. It wasn't as bad as it was before, because I'd built up a familiarity, a reference point with, let's say, freedom from this particular vice. And I typically find that the clients that approach me with this kind of problem, the ones who typically get more success than others, are people who have, understandably, had a lot of success in this arena before. But the problem usually lies when we're trying to use conventional, let's say, blockers. So we'll just block that out via some of the applications that you can download on the App Store. And I'm talking specifically maybe about iOS, but equally Android, I'm sure, has their own options. I just don't have any reference point for any particular ones. I know there's apps like Safeguard, or you can also use DNS settings. And I feel like I have a very, very good DNS setting on my Sexual Energy Mastery course that allows you to better mitigate the behavior of watching adult material and overall that PMO habit in your life. But typically the problem is the loopholes. There are many, many loopholes that lie in the things that I've mentioned before, the safeguarding. The DNS one is a little bit more let's say, inconvenient to overcome, because there's various different parameters you have to go through. You might need to call up your internet provider and turn off certain settings that have been put and safeguarded in a way to stop, this particular habit happening. So how do we get over this particular problem of undoing those loopholes? Because I'm sure if you're a man especially, maybe women, I don't know, but I think women have no idea about how strong the sexual reflex is. And when you really want to gorge on the fantasy, you will find it's amazing how devious you can become. And I've been there. It's amazing to kind of observe yourself, almost like you're watching a stranger or like some crackhead try and find every single way to get over the safeguards that you have previously put in play to stop yourself from doing this particular habit. Now, if we find a way of mitigating these loopholes, and there is a way, and part and parcel of the video, to be completely transparent to you, is to let you know that I have been working behind the scenes to find a way to undo the prospect in and of itself of viewing adult material on iOS devices. So if you have, an iPhone, if you have an iPad, like the iPad that I'm using here, or any desktop variant, I have a solution that will completely remove the prospect of you even getting access to these things. And your instant reflex to that might be, oh, that's very, very weak, Joseph, because you should rely solely on willpower. Sure, you can indulge that narrative. That's completely fine. But going back to what I prefaced, the strongest thing is to just completely, as I'm doing here, remove the temptation from your immediate environment and putting it outside the remit of your possibility. So again, if this is our kind of immediate environment here, and we have all these vices like our cigarette, or let's put just a syringe there. That's the weirdest syringe I've ever seen. Let's put, again, adult-related material in here. You can have as much willpower as you want, but having these things in your immediate surrounding is not going to be beneficial to your life. But with cigarettes, there's an argument. You can put these outside of your reach. With heroin, whatever that is, crack, let's say, we could put a little crack pipe in here, a little glass, do a better job here. Let's say it's a little crack pipe, yeah. If we can put these things outside of our environment, surely that is going to be more conducive to us being consistent with the kind of behavior that, we want to see. But again, the problem has always been for me is this part is so difficult to get outside of here without the prospect of those loopholes. So I kind of went off topic there, but it's all relevant. If you are an Apple user, if you have an iPhone, if you have an iPad, and you just want that complete reset, you want that kind of relief in the idea that even if you wanted to, there is no prospect of that happening whatsoever, then you can look at the comment section below or in the description, and me and you can have a conversation about setting that up for you. Reason, again, guys, I'm not a huge marketer, but the reason why I'm so passionate about this particular idea is that I've done this with 12 people now, and every single one of them have reported that they cannot get around this particular system. So if again, this has been something that has been bothering for you a long time and it's causing you a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, then this is an option for you. As I said in a previous video, I've never smoked crack before. I've never done heroin before. What else have I never done before? There's some stuff I've done that I'm, not particularly proud of. I tried a bit of cocaine at university, didn't really like it, wasn't really my thing. Weed was my thing. As you all know, I couldn't go a single day without smoking at least 2 to 3 spliffs. I used to get up in the morning, wake and bake. I used to go to sleep with a spliff, not with a spliff on me, but I'd have a spliff spliff, and then I would go to sleep. The spliff is the UK slang for a joint, tobacco and cannabis mixed together. And I had to, actually one of the way, what's interesting is I was kind of forced by the universe, by God, by whoever you want to call it, to change, because as many of you know, I was sectioned in the UK. A Section 2 is a 28-day hold in a mental health hospital, because it wasn't actually the cannabis that did it for me, but my dealer spiked my cannabis with something called prison spice, which is a hallucinogen. It's more closely related to a psychedelic than it is. I'm not even sure a psychedelic, because I think that gives psychedelics a bad name. But essentially, I had a psychotic break, and I was put in a hospital for 28 days. So the idea is I couldn't even get access to weed or cigarettes or anything. And when I got out, it was so easy to not go back to bad habits. It was just so much easier to continue with the kind of good habits that I'd been forced to. You got a family member who's addicted to crack or heroin. You lock them in the cupboard for a month. I mean, not actually in a cupboard, but the equivalent. And they sweat out, and it's a horrible experience for you. Now, I can tell you, hand on my heart, that experience in the mental health hospital was easily the worst time in my life by miles. I didn't have any family, didn't have any friends. I was probably about 200, 300 miles from my home in a town I'd never been to before. It's called Bradford. It's like kind of the Midlands of the UK, and I'm from down south. And everybody in there is paranoid, schizophrenic, bipolar disorder, not fun people to have lunch with. One of the realizations I had when I recognized I was in a bad place is whenever you would have breakfast, lunch, or dinner, what would happen is you would have healthcare professionals, probably about 4, 5, 6, 7 of them, around you watching you eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And they had to take all the cutlery back, and they counted the cutlery. So you weren't allowed to leave the place, because people would take knives from their toast or whatever. They would take their knife and they would put it down the trousers, and then they would go and stab somebody an hour later. So again, not nice people. My anxiety was worse than I've ever felt it before. But I always look back on that time period, and I remember the first thing I said to my father when he came to visit me, 2 weeks in, was this needed to happen. I'm horrified, but I understand this is part of the process of me becoming a greater person. Now, that's a very extreme way to kind of describe what I've been talking about here. And the idea is, if there is something that is becoming a vice for you, you have to bully yourself a little bit. You have to put some parameters in play that stop you doing the behavior that you don't want to see anymore. And if you can put that outside the remit of possibilities for you, then that's always going to be a good thing. I was going to draw here this example of, let's say there's you, right? And you're sat down on the couch, right? This is a couch right here, and this is your coffee table. Maybe this is your TV here, yeah. And again, I've said to myself, I've never smoked crack, I've never done heroin, but if there's a little crack pipe sitting on my coffee table, ready to go, and I'm trying to enjoy my downtime, and I'm watching TV, and maybe my TV show's getting a little bit dull, I might pick up that crack pipe and have a smoke, for the boredom, for the monotony. I might do that. And, I'm sure none of us would feel comfortable with having illicit materials available so conveniently. Again, I just need to stretch my hand, a meter, and grab that crack pipe, start smoking, and next thing you know, I'm sucking dick for money. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So I screen my environment. I take that crack pipe and I throw that in the bin. I take it out of my house. I don't allow it inside the remit of my environment. So just something to think about, gentlemen. I'm sure that last part is going to be a soundbite. What I'd be really interested in is, this particular iOS technique is not just for adult material as well. It could be anything. It could be, if you have a problem scrolling on Instagram or, Facebook or anything else that you feel is kind of ruining your life and driving you. I think you can have a good relationship with these things, but that good relationship invariably turns to a vice. And I don't like to be subservient to anything. These aren't theories, these are facts. Speak soon.